Welcome to our deep dive today. We're getting into something, well, really personal, something that impacts all of us, our relationship with healthcare. That feeling many of us get walking into a doctor's office and sort of instinctively handing over our free will, just
Mhm.
hoping someone else can, fix whatever's wrong. Today, we're digging into a stack of sources that really challenge this whole idea. They argue that maybe the biggest threat to us, to human survival, isn't war or terrorism. It's actually microscopic. It's superbugs. And here's where it gets really eye-opening. Even as these bugs get stronger, resisting treatments, most people still just blindly trust the conventional path, right? They expect a doctor to fix them with drugs, even if, sometimes, that path leads to more suffering or worse.
Yeah, what's fascinating is how our sources show this isn't purely a medical thing, not just about hospitals. It's actually presented as a kind of deep psychological trap. Apparently, it's rooted right in our physiology, how our bodies work, and it's been reinforced for decades by, conditioning. We'll explore the science behind this, which is pretty surprising, and also look at some really innovative solutions, one doctor's work especially, aiming to shift this whole dynamic.
Right. So our mission today is to pull out the key insights from all this material you've shared with us. We want to help you understand this kind of critical shift in how we see healthcare and importantly, give you some ideas on how maybe we can break that pattern, take back some autonomy, restore our own agency in our health. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start right at the beginning. That immediate, almost unconscious reaction we have when we feel sick. Our sources talk about the specific pathway, zeta 9, they call it. Get this. When you feel pain or see a rash, a fever, find a lump, this pathway activates 400 milliseconds before your conscious brain even catches up.
Mm. Yeah, 400 milliseconds. It's incredibly fast. And this activation, it triggers fear straight away
Oh,
through the sympathetic nervous system.
mm,
So bang, you get that flood of adrenaline, cortisol, the classic stress hormone.
okay, wow.
And this chemical rush, it primes us for what the sources call irrational behavior, that sudden panic
Mhm.
or that urge to just rush off and see any doctor, whoever's available, maybe not even thinking if they're the right person. You just want that quick fix, that reassurance.
So what's the takeaway here? It sounds like we've been maybe conditioned, almost hypnotized maybe, to jump to the worst case scenario for any symptom, cancer, COVID, whatever it is.
That's very much what the material suggests. This immediate fear, coupled with decades of messaging, has built up this dependency. And the sources trace it back to a key point in time, the 1950s, after antibiotics became widespread.
Ah, okay.
That's when medicine started shifting, they argue, away from empowering patients, helping them understand their own health towards making us passive recipients.
Hmm.
Like, here's your problem, here's your pill.
Right, the quick fix mentality.
Exactly. But this dependency, it's not just inconvenient. The material makes it very clear it can be dangerous. It highlights several big issues when we sort of outsource our judgment completely. Things like wrong diagnoses, sometimes by staff who might not have enough training for complex cases.
Hmm.
Then you have delays caused by, all the legal tape, the system bureaucracy, things that slow down and get in the right care.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But maybe the biggest thing is this misplaced faith, this kind of blind trust in professionals that can make us ignore how much our own thoughts, our own beliefs, actually impact healing.
It really does sound like a classic power dynamic, doesn't it? You mentioned the sources even bring up Machiavellian
Oh, yeah.
ideas, where power and authority to kind of merge, and just being good doesn't guarantee you keep that power. How does that play out here?
It's an interesting connection they draw. The idea isn't necessarily that doctors have bad intentions, not at all. But the system itself, maybe unintentionally, creates a situation where patients, especially when they're scared and vulnerable, just hand over control.
Right.
So the challenge, as the sources put it, is shifting healthcare away from maybe domination through fear, where you comply because you're anxious towards inspiring, real trust and loyalty through understanding, through
Yeah,
compassion.
that makes sense.
And this brings up that core ethical tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Patient autonomy, your right to decide for yourself, versus paternalism, where decisions are made for you, supposedly for your own good.
Uh-huh.
Healthcare ethics usually stress autonomy first,
Hmm.
unless someone's truly medically unable to decide. But the worry highlighted here is that even subtle shifts towards paternalism can chip away at your feeling of control, your self-efficacy.
Dr. Katyali Srivatsa, you mentioned him, the creator of the Dr. Maya app. He shares a really powerful story about this, right?
Yes, he does. He talks about being misdiagnosed himself as a child with typhoid, and that experience taught him something profound. He realized medical errors often happen when doctors don't really listen to the patient's story. The story of the illness as you lived, experienced, and remembered it, as he puts it.
As you lived it.
Yeah. He has this powerful line, your eyes can't see what your mind cannot think. It speaks volumes about needing that internal perspective, not just external checks.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
And he's been committed to this for a long time. The sources mentioned he published a letter way back in 1996. He was warning against using these pre-printed assessment sheets, these checklists.
Really? In 96?
Yes. He argued, pretty insightfully, that a doctor's main job is to listen and offer solutions tailored to the person, not just tick boxes and give standard prescriptions. He even proposed a color-coded symptom system back then to help nurses assess things more personally, even at the first point of contact.
And how is that received?
Well, according to the material, it was met with punitive sanctions, which kind of highlights how resistant the system can be to changes like that.
So we've talked about our own internal reactions, the fear, the conditioning, but the sources also point fingers at the healthcare system itself, don't they? How its structure, its policies, even the physical places can reinforce this dependency and sometimes add to the risks.
Absolutely. There are some pretty stark critiques in the material. One point is about public health experts sometimes operating from what's called theoretical idealism. Ideas that sound good on paper, but maybe lack practical, on-the-ground understanding.
Like what, for example?
Well, consider what the sources term a fundamental mistake. Encouraging people with symptoms to travel to testing centers or hospitals.
Right during outbreaks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The potential downside is, one, they could spread the infection more widely, and two, they risk picking up secondary infections, bacterial, fungal, in those very facilities.
Which can be really serious.
It's extremely serious. Multi-organ failure from sepsis, which can develop for those secondary infections, is mentioned as killing 9 out of 10 hospital patients who get it. It's devastating.
9 out of 10. Wow.
And to back this up, there's a study mentioned that found 15% of hospital patients tested positive for superbugs early in their stay.
So they likely picked them up there?
Mm.
Or brought them in, maybe?
It suggests acquisitions happen quickly, yes.
Yeah.
And they found even things like call buttons were often contaminated. Touching one gave you like a 90% chance of picking up something nasty. Just shows how challenging these environments can be.
And then there's that really surprising observation you mentioned from Dr. Srivats's work about dirty hospitals potentially being better. That sounds so counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the idea behind it, when you unpack it, is about the microbiome. Aggressive cleaning, fumigation, and super clean hospitals might kill off the beneficial microbes, the good germs.
The ones that compete with the bad ones.
Exactly. Those good germs naturally help keep the harmful pathogenic ones in check. So sterilizing everything might actually create an environment where the bad bugs can thrive more easily. It's a complex balance.
That makes a strange kind of sense. It links back to the superbug issue too, doesn't it? The overuse of antibiotics.
Definitely. That's another major systemic point the sources raise. The widespread misuse and overuse of antibiotics wasn't just down to individual doctors making choices. The material suggests it was heavily encouraged, perhaps overzealously, by pharmaceutical companies, even governments, especially after penicillin took off in the 50s.
So the whole focus shifted.
Right. Away from early diagnosis, prevention, maybe more holistic approaches, towards just relying on lab tests and then prescriptions for drugs. Drugs that are now becoming less and less effective against these evolving superbugs. They argue this magic bullet approach is kind of failing us now.
And this isn't just historical stuff either. The sources point to ongoing issues, right? Like nurse-led practices.
Yes, that's mentioned. Where nurses get licenses to diagnose and prescribe, sometimes without direct senior supervision. The concern raised isn't about the nurses themselves, but about potential legal liabilities and whether the depth of expertise is always there for really complex situations.
Okay.
And then there was that incident with Dr. Raul Pino, the health director, who got suspended.
Oh, yeah, I remember that, for encouraging staff to get boosters.
That's the one. It was seen by some as crossing a line into personal medical choice, and it just highlights that ongoing tension between public health measures and individual autonomy. These examples show how the system itself can sometimes, maybe inadvertently, undermine trust and that feeling of personal control.
Okay, so you have the internal fear response, the conditioning, plus these systemic issues. Which brings us squarely to Dr. Kadyali Srivats's solution, Dr. Maya GPT. He created this tool specifically to, as the sources say, stop this cascade of fear and anxiety, right?
Exactly. To stop our thoughts spiraling down into that emotional black hole, as he calls it. that place where fear just takes over, makes us rush to the doctor and essentially surrender our free will, like we talked about.
So Maya's designed to kind of short-circuit that.
That's the idea.
Right.
Rewire that initial fear response, give you back control, prevent that immediate dependency. It's a fundamental shift in approach. It emphasizes symptom-based thinking, mindfulness, understanding what's happening in your body rather than defaulting straight to drugs or standard protocols.
How does that help, practically?
Well, it could help you avoid unnecessary consultations, for one. If you can assess symptoms calmly and see they're likely minor, you manage them at home. It could also reduce infection spread. If you realize something might be infectious but manageable, you self-isolate appropriately instead of going to a crowded clinic.
Right.
And importantly, it still offers connections. Video calls, phone calls with qualified experts when you actually need them after that initial self-assessment.
It sounds like it's about putting the power back in the individual's hands.
Precisely. As Dr. Srivatsa says, healthcare should not be a privilege. It should be a right. And this approach, empowering individuals, echoes really ancient principles too, like those of Charaka, the father of Ayurveda, who focused on personalized care and patient knowledge way back in the 2nd century.
So how does Dr. Maya actually work? What does the user experience?
It's designed to be really accessible. It's multilingual, AI-powered. It uses a simple, color-coded system.
Color-coded.
Yeah, to help you calmly look at your symptoms and signs and figure out, is this likely minor? Is it potentially serious and needs checking out? Or is it possibly infectious, meaning I should probably isolate?
Okay, that sounds straightforward.
And you can interact with it in different ways, voice, uploading images, just typing simple words.
Images, too. That's interesting.
Uh-huh. And what's really fascinating, according to the sources, is its ability to pick up on emotional tone, on subtle word patterns. They suggest it could even potentially help children express difficult concerns, like abuse, maybe without having to say the words directly. It offers a kind of safe, private space for that initial check-in.
That's quite profound.
It really is. This whole patient-centered approach, combined with preventing infection spread through better self-assessment and isolation, it's presented as genuinely groundbreaking. It's about democratizing health information, isn't it? Making sure people can spot symptoms early, take appropriate action, whether that's self-care or getting professional help promptly. This is especially vital for people who might struggle to access information otherwise.
So it's seen as more than just an app.
Oh, definitely. It's framed as a noble cause because it fundamentally empowers you, the individual, with tools and knowledge to manage your health proactively. And by doing that, the hope is it reduces those unnecessary clinic visits, takes some pressure off healthcare systems, particularly in places where resources are tight.
Moving beyond our individual health for a moment, the sources also paint a bigger picture, don't they? About the scale of the superbug challenge.
They certainly do. It's not just about antibiotic overuse in medicine. Environmental factors are huge. They mention things like untreated sewage full of resistant bacteria getting into major rivers. The Ganga, the Yamuna, are named specifically.
Wow, so it's in the water systems.
Yes, and even organic produce comes under scrutiny. Concerns that compost and manure, used as fertilizer, could be colonized with superbugs, potentially getting into our food supply that way. It's a really complex web.
That adds a whole other layer.
It does. And then lay on top of that the impact of misinformation. That can affect our autonomy. The material uses the example of distorted views about HPV vaccine side effects, often spread through social media.
Right, making people scared based on falsehoods.
Exactly. It leads people to make health choices based on fear or rumor, not solid evidence, which again undermines informed self-determination. And they also bring up immune amnesia caused by measles.
Immune amnesia? What's that?
It's where the measles virus doesn't just make you sick at the time. It can actually wipe out some of your previously acquired immunity to other diseases.
Seriously?
Yeah. It's a powerful example of why we need to understand diseases systemically, not just as a collection of immediate symptoms. It affects your body's defenses long term.
Okay, that's quite sobering. But there's hope presented too, right? Agency.
Oh, absolutely. Amidst the challenges, there's real optimism. The sources talk about the potential of phytocompounds.
Phytocompounds, plant chemicals.
Exactly. The active ingredients in plants that have been used in traditional medicine for centuries, millennia even. What's exciting now is that modern science is finding these compounds can work with existing antibiotics, making them more effective. Synergistic effects.
Ah, so combining approaches.
Yes. And using new delivery methods like nanoparticles to target infections better. It points towards a future of more diverse, integrated healing, using ancient wisdom alongside cutting-edge science. moving beyond just relying on one type of drug.
It feels like it comes back to changing our mindset.
I think that's exactly what Dr. Srivatsa believes. He says something really thought-provoking. It is not the behavior that needs to be changed. It is the driver that triggers your imagination, thoughts, and feelings that requires the change.
Driver. Our imagination.
Yeah. And if you think about that Machiavellian idea again, that imagination itself can be a powerful, revolutionary force shaping our reality, it poses a fascinating question, doesn't it? What happens to healthcare when we truly empower the individual's own imagination to take the reins, to really write their own health story, their own healing process?
So we've covered a lot today. We've gone from those deep physiological fear triggers through the systemic problems that can make us feel powerless and landed on this really powerful vision for using technology like Dr. Maya GPT to help us reclaim our free will in healthcare. It really seems to be about moving away from just passively accepting whatever care is offered towards taking informed, empowered action for our own well-being.
Absolutely. The future of health, it seems, really depends on us understanding our own bodies better, being willing to challenge assumptions, and embracing critical thinking. It boils down to recognizing that knowledge, real, understood, applied knowledge, is probably our most valuable tool in navigating everything health-related.
So, thinking about everything we've discussed, what stands out most to you listening right now? How might rethinking that very first reaction you have to a symptom, that initial flash of maybe fear or uncertainty, how might changing that response fundamentally alter your own healthcare journey going forward? And here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If illness is, as some of these sources suggest, at least partly an illusion that you have in mind, heavily influenced by fear, by seeking external validation, by all that societal conditioning, then what profound power do you actually hold in your own healing process right now, maybe even before you seek any external help? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.